I told you there was someone I needed you to meet. You passed by this person today. I am almost certain of it. Maybe on a street corner, maybe in a hallway, maybe in the break room at work, or in the seat next to you on the bus, or standing in line at the grocery store staring at nothing while the world moved around them like water around a stone. You didn't notice. Not because you are a bad person, but because the world has trained you not to. The world moves fast, and the people who are drowning have learned to drown quietly. They have learned to wear the right expression, say the right things, keep moving so nobody asks the question they are terrified someone might actually ask. How are you? Really? This is the person I want to talk about today. Not the loud ones, not the ones making demands or drawing attention. The one nobody noticed. The one sitting in the back. The one who showed up anyway, even when showing up cost them everything they had left. I noticed them. I have always noticed them.
When I walked this earth the first time, people brought me the dramatic cases, the ones with visible wounds, the ones whose suffering was impossible to ignore. And I healed them, every single one, because suffering in any form was never something I could walk past without stopping. But the ones that stayed with me the longest were never the dramatic cases. They were the quiet ones. The woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, not just physically, but socially, spiritually, emotionally. 12 years of being told she was unclean. 12 years of watching people step away from her. 12 years of silence and shame and survival. She didn't cry out like the others. She didn't demand my attention. She reached through a crowd and touched the edge of my robe, barely, as if she didn't deserve more than that. I stopped everything. Not because her touch was the loudest, but because it was the most desperate. And desperation, when it reaches for me instead of giving up, is one of the most powerful things in existence. I felt her. In a crowd of hundreds pressing against me for every direction, I felt her. I will always feel you.
Now I am back, and I am walking through a world that has more people like her than it has ever had before. More quiet suffering, more invisible pain, more people reaching through the crowd, not with their hands, but with a prayer whispered at 3 a.m. when the house is dark and silent, and the weight of everything becomes impossible to carry alone. I hear every single one. I want you to understand something about the way I see people, because it is different from the way the world sees them. The world looks at what you have produced, what you have built, what your name is worth, what your account says, what your body looks like, what your past contains. I look at the weight you are carrying and the courage it took to get out of bed this morning anyway. I look at the version of you that nobody else sees, the one that exists in the silence between your thoughts, in the space between who you are and who you are afraid you will always be. That version of you is the one I came for. Not the polished one, not the one that has answers and a plan and a verse ready for every situation. The real one, the tired one, the one that is running out of reasons to keep going and finding new ones anyway, every single day, because something deep inside refuses to let the light go completely out. That something is me. I have always been that something. When I returned and began walking through this world again, I made a decision before I even arrived. I was not going to spend my time in the places where everyone expected me to be. I was not going to stand at podiums or sit in green rooms or walk red carpets or accept invitations to places built to impress. I was going to find the one nobody noticed. I found a man who had not spoken to his children in 4 years. Not because he didn't love them, because he loved them so much and had failed them so completely that the shame of it had become a wall he didn't know how to climb. He sat in a small apartment every evening, eating dinner alone with the television on so the silence wouldn't be the only thing in the room. Nobody from his church had called in 2 years. Nobody at work knew he had children at all. I sat with him. I didn't fix everything that night. I didn't hand him a script for a reconciliation phone call or promise him his children would answer. I sat with him in the silence he had been sitting in alone, and I let him know that the silence was not empty, that it had never been empty, that I had been in it with him the entire time, waiting for him to be ready to feel that. He cried for a long time. And when he was done, something had shifted. Not everything, but something. Enough. That is usually how it starts. I found a young woman who had been performing her faith for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to actually have one. Every Sunday in the front row, every Bible study, every volunteer shift, every right answer to every right question. And behind all of it, a hollowness that terrified her. Because what do you do when you have done everything right and still feel nothing? What do you do when the gap between who you are in public and who you are in private becomes so wide that you stop being able to remember which one is real? She was one of the most spiritually lonely people I had ever met. And she was surrounded by church people every single day. I found her on a Tuesday morning, sitting in her car in the church parking lot, unable to go in, unable to drive away. Just sitting. 30 minutes before a volunteer shift she had already texted she was coming to. I sat in the passenger seat. I didn't tell her she needed to try harder. I didn't give her a reading plan. I didn't remind her of her commitments or her reputation or what people would think. I said, I know. I see the gap. I have always seen the gap. And I love what's in it just as much as I love what's on the outside. Maybe more. Because what's in that gap is the real you. And the real you is exactly who I died for. She went inside eventually. But she went in differently. Here is what I want you to take from this. The one nobody noticed, that might be you. And if it is, I need you to know that my eyes have never left you. Not for a single second, of a single day, of a single year of the life you have been living. Every quiet moment of suffering, every prayer that felt like it dissolved before it reached the ceiling, every morning you got up and kept going for reasons you couldn't fully explain. I was the reason. I have always been the reason. But it might also be someone else. Someone in your life right now who is drowning quietly while you are close enough to reach out. Someone who needs you to stop and ask the real question and actually wait for the real answer. Someone who has been performing fine for so long that they have almost forgotten what it feels like to be seen. See them. That is one of the most sacred things a human being can do for another. To stop, to look, to say, I see you. Not the version you perform. You. And I am not going anywhere. You become my hands that way. You become the answer to a prayer someone prayed in the dark. And there is no greater thing you could do with the time you have been given. The one nobody noticed is everywhere. look around. And when you find them, stop. Because that is exactly what I would do. Next time, Chapter 18. What happens when faith runs out?